My name is Amara Shaw, though the people who truly know me call me Mara. I was 25 years old and the founder and chief executive officer of North Star Grid when the mother who had abandoned me 16 years earlier looked straight at me inside my own headquarters and asked whether I cleaned the building. Celeste Caldwell stood beneath our 40-foot compass emblem in the glass lobby, dressed for the most important business meeting of her life. My father, Nolan, waited beside her with a presentation case. My older sister, Brielle, was studying the security gates as if she already owned whatever lay beyond them. Then Celeste noticed me. Her eyes moved from my face to my plain black suit and back again. Recognition arrived, but respect did not. I had known they were scheduled to arrive. Their company name had been sitting inside North Star's procurement system for weeks, surrounded by financial projections and compliance questions. I had still wondered whether 16 years would make my parents hesitate when they saw me. Celeste needed less than 3 seconds to place my face. Nolan recognized me just after she did. His shoulders tightened, but he offered no greeting. Brielle looked longest. For one moment, she seemed afraid. Then she copied our mother's expression and waited to see what rank I held. Amara? What are you doing here? I had imagined that question in 100 different voices. None had sounded so casual. You work in this enormous place? She continued. I suppose there must be decent money in cleaning executive offices. Or are you one of the maids they use for private events? The receptionist lowered her eyes. 2 security officers stopped pretending not to listen. I felt 9 years old for one sharp second, standing with a suitcase while my mother decided my absence would make her real family more comfortable. Then my identification badge unlocked the executive gate. Neither, I said. I'm the CEO of this company. The head of security touched 2 fingers to his earpiece and asked whether I wanted the executive boardroom opened early. My assistant crossed the lobby carrying the agenda I had approved that morning. Nobody announced my title for me. They did not need to. Authority moved around me in small, practiced motions, and with each one, the certainty drained from my mother's face. I had imagined feeling triumphant if this moment ever came. Instead, I felt tired. A job title could correct her assumption, but it could not return the nights I had listened for my father's car, or the birthdays on which I had wondered whether Brielle had finally admitted the truth. Celeste stared at the silver letters beneath the compass emblem, North Star Grid. The company her family had driven from Dayton to Chicago to impress was valued at $6.1 billion. They had come seeking a 5-year regional fulfillment contract worth $180 million. Until that moment, none of them had understood that the woman authorized to enter every floor was the daughter they had refused to bring home. Brielle's mouth opened. Nolan gripped his case with both hands. Celeste recovered first. She stepped closer, her shock already rearranging itself into pride. Well, she said, smiling for the employees watching us, that Caldwell ambition had to come from somewhere. That was when I knew she had not come prepared to apologize. She had come for a contract, and now she intended to claim my life as part of her proposal. What she did not know was that another file waited upstairs, one bearing her signature and the date she chose to give me away even after the accusation against me had begun to collapse. Before I take you back to the night this started, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. Stay with me, because this community understands that surviving a family's cruelty never makes that cruelty a gift. To understand why my mother's smile frightened me more than her insult, you have to return with me to Dayton, when I was 9, and still believed being useful could earn me a permanent place at our table. Our family looked respectable from the street. My father ran Caldwell Regional Freight, the trucking company he had inherited. My mother managed its finances and made every important emotional decision in our house. Brielle was 13, beautiful, expressive, and skilled at turning discomfort into an emergency. I was the quiet one who completed homework without reminders, folded laundry before anyone asked, and apologized whenever another person became upset. Celeste called that maturity. What she meant was that I required less attention. At school, I learned that achievement could be dangerous at home. When I brought back a mathematics certificate, Nolan placed it on the refrigerator. Brielle refused dinner, saying everyone loved me more. Celeste removed the certificate before breakfast and explained that family harmony mattered more than displaying every little victory. I nodded and hid the paper beneath my mattress. Brielle received a new dress that weekend because, according to our mother, she needed cheering up. That was the invisible rule of our house. Brielle's pain required action, while mine required silence. Brielle had learned the opposite lesson. If she cried, doors closed and conversations stopped. If I earned praise at school, she developed a headache before dinner. If Dad asked me how I had solved a math problem, she accused me of showing off. My parents soothed her, then warned me not to provoke jealousy. I adored her anyway. She was my oldest sister, and I mistook my longing for closeness as proof that closeness existed. The week everything ended, Celeste planned to wear her mother's sapphire brooch to a freight industry dinner. It represented the polished history she wanted people to see: 3 generations of family, discipline, and success. On Thursday evening, she opened the velvet box and found it empty. "Who touched this?" she demanded. I was at the dining table, working through fractions. Brielle stood near the staircase, pale and perfectly still. "Amara had it," she whispered. I looked up. "Didn't." Brielle began to cry. She said she had seen me enter our parents' bedroom. She said I had shown her the brooch and threatened to hurt her if she told. The details came easily, one after another, while my mother held her, and my father stared at me, as though he were searching my face for a criminal. "Check my room," I begged. "Check my backpack. Ask her where I put it." Celeste did not move. "Your sister says she is afraid of you. She hates me." The moment I said it, Brielle buried her face against our mother. Nolan told me not to make matters worse. Celeste said the house could not remain peaceful while one daughter felt unsafe. No one asked whether I felt safe. No one called the police about the missing jewelry. An investigation might have produced an answer they did not want. Instead, Celeste went upstairs and pulled my small blue suitcase from the closet. She packed 3 school uniforms, underwear, 2 sweaters, my toothbrush, and the stuffed rabbit I had stopped sleeping with, because Brielle called it childish. I followed her from drawer to drawer, promising to be quieter, better, invisible if necessary. "This isn't punishment," she said. "This is what your behavior has forced us to do." Nolan carried the suitcase to his car. I waited for him to challenge her once we were alone. He only turned on the radio and drove across Dayton in silence. We stopped outside a narrow brick house belonging to Evelyn Shaw, my school counselor. She had once asked my parents whether the tension at home was affecting me. Celeste had called her intrusive. Now Nolan placed my suitcase on Evelyn's porch and told her the family needed one night apart. Evelyn looked from him to me. "Does Amara know why she's here?" "Her sister isn't safe with her in the house," he answered. I grabbed his sleeve. "Dad, tell Mom I'll say sorry. I'll say it even if I didn't do it." He removed my hand gently, which hurt more than if he had shouted. He promised we would discuss everything in the morning. Then he returned to his car. I stood beside the blue suitcase while his taillights disappeared. Evelyn stayed on the porch with me until the street was empty, as if she understood that going inside too soon would make his departure real. Morning came. My father did not. By sunset, I understood that temporary was the word adults used when they lacked courage to say forever aloud. Evelyn never asked me to pretend I was not waiting. For the first week, she left the porch light burning until dawn. She kept my suitcase near the front door because moving it would have felt like admitting my parents were not coming. Every afternoon, I sat beside the living room window listening for Nolan's engine. Every evening, Evelyn brought me dinner without saying I had waited long enough. On my first night, she showed me a small bedroom with yellow curtains and an empty bookshelf. I refused to unpack. I slept in my clothes on top of the blanket, afraid my father might return while I was changing. Evelyn did not correct me. She placed a glass of water beside the bed, gave me a key to the bathroom, and said every door in her house could remain open or closed according to what made me feel safe. I had never heard an adult describe my comfort as something that mattered. I tested her in quiet ways. I hid half a sandwich under my pillow in case food became conditional. I apologized when a cup slipped from my hand. I woke before her to clean the kitchen, believing usefulness was rent. Each time, Evelyn responded without anger. She replaced the cup, stocked a drawer with snacks, and told me children were not tenants. On the 8th day, she contacted child services. My parents answered the caseworker's calls, but they would not meet me. They authorized temporary guardianship so Evelyn could enroll me in school and take me to a doctor. Months later, the arrangement became permanent. I signed nothing, decided nothing, and still believed the right apology might reverse it. I wrote Celeste 3 letters during those months. In the first, I promised never to upset Brielle again. In the second, I asked for my winter coat and a photograph from my bedroom. In the third, I wrote only that I missed them. Evelyn mailed each one and kept the postal receipts. No answer came. On visitation days, she drove me to the family services office and waited while I watched the clock. My parents canceled every appointment. When the permanent order arrived, Evelyn explained that it gave her responsibility for me, but did not make my parents' choice my fault. I nodded as if I understood. That night, I finally unpacked the blue suitcase, but I kept it beneath my bed, where I could reach it quickly. Evelyn did not call herself my mother. She did something harder. She behaved like one without demanding the title. She attended school conferences, learned which silences meant I was frightened, and never withdrew affection to correct my behavior. On my 10th birthday, she gave me a brass compass that had belonged to her late husband. "It won't choose your direction," she told me. "It will only remind you that a direction exists." I carried it in my pocket until its edges became smooth. Safety did not transform me overnight. I still panicked when Evelyn sounded tired, and I interpreted ordinary disagreement as preparation for eviction. She taught me that conflict could end with two people remaining in the same room. Years of that consistency mattered more than any speech about love. By 15, I was helping Evelyn's neighborhood food network after school. Volunteers had groceries, vans, and good intentions, yet families still missed deliveries because inventory lists did not match routes. I built a simple program that grouped addresses, tracked available food, and redirected drivers when something changed. It began as a way to stop milk spoiling in a storeroom. At 17, it won a national civic technology competition. The first version failed whenever two drivers entered updates at the same time. Instead of hiding the failure, I spent a weekend riding each route, asking volunteers what they actually needed. The rebuilt system cut wasted trips and helped the network add 3 neighborhoods without another van. That result taught me the principle that later governed North Star. Reliable systems begin by listening to the people carrying the consequences. The prize brought scholarship money, an accelerator placement, and Julian Park, a practical programmer who challenged every assumption I made without ever treating disagreement as rejection. We incorporated North Star Grid when I turned 18. I legally took Evelyn's surname, not to erase Amara Caldwell, but to honor the home that had kept its door open. Julian and I worked from borrowed desks and paid ourselves last. He handled operations, while I met carriers who doubted a teenager understood their business. Some did not return my calls until our data saved them money. Evelyn could not finance a technology company, but she brought food to our office, read every contract she could understand, and reminded me that exhaustion was not evidence of commitment. Our first institutional investment arrived only after the product had already proved useful. North Star grew because the problem was real. Hospitals, food networks, manufacturers, and regional carriers needed to know where goods were, where risks were building, and which routes could adapt. Julian and I made mistakes, corrected them, and refused acquisition offers that would have cost us control. 7 years after incorporation, North Star was valued at $6.1 billion. People later called that rise sudden. Nothing about it felt sudden to me. It was thousands of ordinary decisions made after the world had taught me what happened when unreliable people controlled essential systems. 2 days before the Caldwells entered my lobby, Simone Barrett, North Star's general counsel, placed their bid on my desk. "There's a conflict we need documented," she said, "and a compliance review you need to see." Simone had built her career around the belief that good governance mattered most when following it was inconvenient. She did not soften the report because she knew my history, and she did not assume I wanted the Caldwells punished. She asked whether I could remain in the building during the review without influencing the staff. Part of me wanted to reject the bid personally. Another part, the younger, more dangerous part, wanted to approve it so my parents would finally need me. I disclosed both impulses. Simone recorded my recusal and restricted my access to the committee's deliberations. Surrendering control felt like the first honest decision of the meeting. I disclosed that Caldwell Regional Freight belonged to my biological family and removed myself from every scoring decision. Simone would chair the independent committee. She also showed me the preliminary findings: maintenance dates that did not match repair invoices, drivers classified in ways that reduced wages, unresolved safety complaints, and records altered shortly before North Star requested them. The company was carrying more debt than its proposal admitted. Without our 5-year contract, its lenders could force restructuring. My family had arrived expecting North Star to rescue the business Brielle was supposed to inherit. If the bid fails, I told Simone, it fails on evidence. Not because of me. And if it passes? The question hurt. Then it passes without me. That evening, Evelyn came to my office carrying a gray document case. She had preserved every guardianship paper, but never pressed me to read them. I had spent years saying the past could not help me build anything. The Caldwell bid had made the past a corporate conflict, and avoidance was no longer discipline. Inside were school reports, caseworker notes, copies of unanswered letters, and the consent granting Evelyn permanent guardianship. Halfway through, I found a report dated 11 days after Nolan left me on her porch. The report described the friend's mother returning the brooch and Brielle admitting she had taken it. A second note recorded Celeste, saying that bringing me home would destabilize Brielle. Nolan told the caseworker he did not dispute the new evidence, but he supported whatever preserved calm inside the marriage. Neither parent asked that I be interviewed again. Celeste's sapphire brooch had been discovered inside Brielle's overnight bag by a friend's mother. Brielle admitted taking it without permission. The caseworker recorded that the allegation against me could not be substantiated and recommended immediate reunification counseling. 3 weeks later, Celeste and Nolan signed the permanence order anyway. I read their signatures until the letters blurred. For 16 years, I had believed they abandoned me because they trusted Brielle more. The file revealed something worse. They had received the truth and decided that restoring me would disturb the peace built from my absence. Anger came first, hot and almost welcome. Beneath it waited grief. If they had remained mistaken, some childish part of me could imagine correcting them. The signed order ended that fantasy. There was no missing explanation capable of making me wanted. They had possessed the explanation and still selected the home without me. Evelyn sat across from me without reaching for the papers. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I told you the accusation fell apart. You said you didn't want the file." Her voice remained gentle. "I should have asked again when you were older." "I am sorry." That apology contained everything my parents' explanations never had: a clear action, accepted responsibility, and no demand that I comfort the person apologizing. I closed the case. "Come tomorrow." "To the meeting?" "No, I need to face them myself. Come afterward, when I remember what family is supposed to feel like." The next morning, after Celeste mistook me for a cleaner and learned who owned the executive badge, I led the Caldwells into North Star's boardroom. Simone waited at the head of the table with the independent review team. I took a seat along the side, physically separating myself from the voting members. On the elevator, Celeste had tried to place a hand on my arm for the benefit of 2 employees traveling with us. I stepped away. Nolan asked whether North Star provided family offices for executives, as if we were discussing where he might visit later. Brielle said nothing. Their speed astonished me. Within minutes, they had moved from treating me as service staff to imagining access to my company. Celeste ignored the arrangement. "You could have told us what you became. You gave Evelyn permanent guardianship. You knew where I lived." Nolan placed his presentation case on the table. "We all made mistakes. We're here about business. Then business is what the committee will evaluate." Brielle watched me as if searching for the child who used to apologize first. Celeste saw something more useful, a relationship she could display. North Star clearly inherited its discipline from Caldwell Freight, she told Simone. Amara grew up around logistics. We pushed both our daughters to become independent. She described childhood weekends near the freight office, omitting that I had spent most of them completing homework alone, while my parents trained Brielle as the heir. She spoke of sacrifice, standards, and difficult choices. Every phrase transformed something taken from me into something supposedly given. "You put me out at 9, I said. Celeste's smile tightened. "We made a difficult parenting decision. Look what it produced. Sometimes a child needs consequences before she discovers her strength." She spoke as though Evelyn, Julian, my scholarships, and every sleepless year were supporting characters in a lesson Celeste had designed. Nolan nodded slowly. The old family system reassembled itself before me, my mother defining reality, my father approving it, and Brielle, waiting to learn which version protected her. Simone ended the exchange. Miss Shaw has no vote on your proposal. We will take a short recess before presenting our findings. Brielle followed me into the corridor. Mara, wait. It was the first time anyone in my biological family had used my chosen name. She glanced toward the boardroom door. The company employs hundreds of people. Dad borrowed against everything. If North Star turns us down, we lose control. Then your records should have been honest. I can tell you what happened with the brooch. For a moment, the corridor disappeared. I saw Brielle at 13, crying into Celeste's shoulder while I begged someone to search my room. Adult Brielle still knew where to press. The difference was that she could no longer decide what I would pay. The offer landed exactly as she intended. At 9, I would have traded anything for those words. At 25, I heard the condition attached to them. You want me to buy the truth with a contract? I want you to help your family. Evelyn is my family. You want me to protect the people who removed me. Brielle's face collapsed. I took it. I was jealous, and I wanted Mom to choose me. I told her, you threatened me, because I knew fear would make her act. When the brooch came back, I begged them not to bring you home. Did you ever ask where I went? Her eyes filled. At first, Mom said Evelyn was better equipped for you, and that contacting you would confuse everyone. Later, I stopped asking because your absence made my life easier. The honesty was ugly, but it was finally honesty. And they agreed. She looked down. Mom said the house had finally become peaceful. Dad said changing the arrangement would embarrass everyone. For years, I had imagined the truth arriving like medicine. It arrived like a second injury, cleaner than the first but just as deep. Tell them in the boardroom, I said. If I do, will you help us? No. Tell them because it is true. When the meeting resumed, Simone projected the compliance findings. She did not mention my childhood. She did not need to. North Star's investigators had verified deferred maintenance, inaccurate driver classifications, unresolved wage claims, and revisions made after the bid entered review. The presentation included testimony from drivers who had reported brake and scheduling problems, payroll comparisons, and maintenance invoices that contradicted Caldwell Freight's submitted logs. The committee had offered the company 2 opportunities to correct the record. Instead, executives certified both versions as accurate. Nolan objected that regional carriers often corrected paperwork during negotiations. Simone showed dates, invoices, and internal approvals. Brielle's authorization appeared on several revisions. Brielle acknowledged approving them. Nolan accused her of panicking under pressure. Celeste blamed an overworked accounting department. Watching them redirect responsibility made the childhood pattern unmistakable. Whoever threatened the family image became expendable, and the people with authority described themselves as victims of circumstances. These are correctable issues, Celeste insisted. A strategic partnership would give us the resources to improve. North Star contracts with companies that demonstrate reliability before receiving public trust, Simone replied. It does not purchase compliance after discovering its absence. The committee's recommendation was unanimous. Reject the bid and refer the findings through the required labor and safety channels. Nolan turned toward me. You can overrule this. No, I said, and I would not if I could. Celeste rose. After everything we gave you, the gray document case lay beside my chair. I opened it and removed the guardianship order. You gave me 3 uniforms, 2 sweaters, and a blue suitcase. Evelyn gave me a home. Teachers gave me opportunities. Scholarship committees invested in my work. Julian built North Star beside me. Thousands of employees made it valuable. You do not get to erase them and place your name over their contribution. I told them North Star's first program had not begun inside Caldwell Freight. It began in a neighborhood storeroom where volunteers were trying to deliver food before it spoiled. Its name came from Evelyn's compass, not from the Caldwell Company. Its value came from people who corrected failures instead of concealing them. The corporation my parents wanted to claim had been built from principles their own bid violated. She looked around the room, measuring the danger to her reputation. We taught you resilience. I slid the caseworker's report across the table. The brooch was recovered 11 days after you removed me. The accusation was unsubstantiated. Reunification was recommended. 3 weeks later, you signed this. Nolan stared at his signature. Celeste did not touch the paper. "We were protecting Brielle," she said. "I was 9. I was your daughter too." Silence settled over the table. I turned to Brielle. She began without looking at our parents. She admitted taking the brooch, fabricating the threat, and begging them to keep me away after the truth surfaced. Nolan whispered her name as a warning. For once, she continued anyway. "They knew," she finished. "They knew Mara hadn't done it." Celeste's face hardened. "You were a troubled child. We made you stand on your own, and now you are using that strength against us." I had spent half my life preparing an angry answer. The truth required less volume. "You did not make me strong. You made me homeless. My success does not turn your abandonment into parenting, and my survival does not create a debt to you." I placed my North Star identification beside the guardianship order. "You will not use my name, my image, or this company to promote Caldwell Freight. The contract is rejected on evidence. Our relationship is rejected by my choice." Nolan asked whether I felt nothing for the employees who would suffer. I told him concern for workers was precisely why North Star could not place critical deliveries with a carrier that concealed safety failures. Compassion did not require rewarding the people who created the risk. Celeste called me vindictive. Simone reminded her that I had not participated in the vote. Julian, who had remained silent beside the committee, confirmed that the same evidence would have disqualified any bidder. Their statements did not rescue me. They made visible the safeguards I had chosen before my family entered the building. Celeste opened her mouth, but no defense remained. She could not claim ignorance because her signature was dated after the report. She could not claim credit because the people who had actually helped me were named. She could not claim persecution because I had surrendered the decision to an independent committee. For the first time in my life, my mother had nothing to say. The consequences did not arrive as a dramatic collapse. They came through letters, hearings, lender meetings, and signatures. The same ordinary mechanisms my parents once used to remove me. Without North Star's contract, Caldwell Freight entered creditor-controlled restructuring. Nolan, Celeste, and Brielle lost operational control. Safety and wage findings proceeded through formal review. North Star did not purchase the company or rescue its owners. We helped an ethical carrier submit a transition plan that preserved as many drivers and warehouse workers' jobs as possible. Brielle resigned and cooperated with investigators. She sent one letter accepting responsibility without requesting forgiveness. I did not answer immediately. Accountability could begin in a single honest moment, but sisterhood could not be rebuilt by one. I kept Brielle's letter separate from the guardianship file. They belonged to different questions. The file proved what happened. The letter could only prove what she chose after being exposed. I would judge any future relationship by years of behavior, not one confession delivered when her inheritance was disappearing. That boundary felt neither cruel nor generous. It felt accurate. For the first time, I understood forgiveness did not require access, and refusing access did not require me to spend the rest of my life rehearsing anger. Nolan left messages describing his regret. Celeste attempted to tell business contacts that her sacrifice had inspired me. Simone issued a legal notice prohibiting the use of my name and likeness. I established permanent no-contact boundaries with both parents. North Star's Community Foundation later expanded the Food Network program that had inspired our first software. We named its training fellowship for Evelyn, with her consent. She accepted only after ensuring the program would serve displaced teenagers without requiring them to display their pain as proof of deserving help. That evening, Evelyn waited in her kitchen with 2 cups of tea. I set my executive badge beside the old brass compass and the key she had given me 16 years earlier. The blue suitcase remained closed in the hall closet, not destroyed, not forgotten, and no longer packed for departure. Evelyn touched the compass. "Did you find your direction?" I looked at the key to the home that had never required me to earn my place. I found out I was already there.